Well, I watched the entirety of the new Ted TV series. I was pretty curious about it. I liked the first movie. I thought the second one was okay. There's, of course, a ton of overlap in terms of sense of humor when it comes to this show and other Seth MacFarlane shows like Family Guy and American Dad, and that's part of the reason why I'm talking about it here on the channel. But the main reason why is because I was just surprised by the Ted TV show. It is not at all what I was expecting it to be, and it has a lot of issues, don't get me wrong, but at the end of the 7 really long episodes, I thought it was pretty dang good. Now, before I get into anything else, and believe me, there is a lot of other stuff I want to talk about when it comes to this show, but the basic setup for it is this. John and Ted are in high school. John is 16 years old, living with his parents, Maddie and Susan, and also his cousin Blair, who is in college and is super progressive and tends to clash with the ultra-conservative father. That's the setup for the show. That's the setup for the family dynamic, and you wouldn't think the family dynamic would be too important in the Ted TV series, but it's actually integral. There are portions of episodes and possibly in total amount of time, full episode lengths of content dedicated to the relationships in the family outside of Ted and John, the two real main characters of the show, or at least the main characters of the movie. The main character of the show really seems to be this family. They really focus on it in a lot of the episodes, and that was really surprising. It doesn't always work. Sometimes it's a little heavy-handed and a little bit preachy with how the dad and the cousin interact. Other times it does feel genuinely heartfelt and like there was a lot of effort put into these characters and their relationships. I won't lie, I thought all the performances in the show were really, really good. And of course the animation on Ted is great, and that's probably all the animation talk we're gonna do in this video on this channel, where I almost exclusively talk about adult animation. But it's a Ted TV show, and it's a strange Ted TV show on top of that. Just the fact that this show had so much effort put into this family dynamic, that was enough to kind of blow me away in terms of the effort put into this. I really thought this was going to be a straight across 22-minute 90s throwback sitcom, except with Ted, kind of like Alf, but a little bit more into the 90s and modernized without a laugh track. There is no laugh track in this show, if you were curious, so rest easy. I can complain about a lot of things when it comes to this Ted TV show, and I will in just a second, but one thing I definitely won't say about it is that it's lazy or uncreative with how it sets up some of its stories and characters. It really seems like a ton of effort was put into this show, regardless of how it turned out. I can see the effort visibly in just how some of these episodes are structured, but unfortunately, speaking of structure, that brings us to our first really big negative on this show, and that is the length of the episodes. Ted is a Peacock original, which is a streaming service over here in America. I don't know if it's worldwide, who cares? It's on a streaming service. And that means it doesn't have to adhere to any kind of time limit. It doesn't have to be 22 minutes, it doesn't have to be 42. The episodes can be any length they need to tell the story. And you would think that means, oh, okay, they're going to have plenty of time. It's not going to feel rushed. It's going to be perfectly paced. But no time limit doesn't necessarily mean the pacing of the show is safe. In fact, I would say every single episode of Ted feels a little bit too long, and in some cases, they feel way too long. The first episode of this show clocks in at 50 minutes long. The next one is 39, going on to 37, 37, 33, 43, and 42. That is really, really long for a 90s kind of throwback sitcom that's being modernized, sure, but still, the length of it at times, I feel like really hurts the pacing of the show, especially when they're dealing with heavier topics like they do in one particular episode that I won't spoil here because I do recommend people go and check this show out. But the show gets really, really heavy at one point, and it's with the family dynamic once again. It has nothing to do with Ted or John. They're kind of out of the show during this sequence, but it's between the dad and the cousin Blair. They have like a big fight and they clash heads, and it turns into this whole big dramatic thing. That's in this Ted TV show, and that can last for like 15 full minutes in an episode. It's just bizarre. It's a really strange choice. Now, the length doesn't always hurt the show. It also meant that they were able to get in a lot of great gags and jokes. And since it's going straight to Peacock, they don't have to worry about putting it up on actual TV. And that means they can get away with a lot more stuff. There is tons of cursing in this show, which is refreshing because that's kind of how you expect these characters to talk. And they talk like that. It helps them feel a little bit more grounded and real and connected to their characters from the films, especially with Ted and John. If they couldn't curse, they wouldn't really feel like the same characters. It would just feel kind of off and inauthentic, which if you're having a show about a talking teddy bear, you gotta be authentic. The length of the episodes in the Ted TV series is both a blessing and a curse. It's nice that these episodes are long enough for the writers to explore all they want to explore, tell all the jokes they want to tell, and just kind of go crazy with whatever story they're setting up. But on the other side of things, sometimes the pace is grinded to a dead halt for the sake of a joke that maybe should have been cut. Sometimes the show dwells on these ultra dramatic moments that don't have anything to do with John and Ted, but are more about the family dynamic. And regardless of whether or not these scenes work for you when you're watching the show, they feel weird in a Ted TV series. It really is a pretty interesting show to watch because you never know what to expect. Sometimes it's shock humor, sometimes it's a really weird plot line, sometimes it's exactly what you would expect from Ted and John based on what you know about them from the movies. Sometimes it's a sort of half-hearted 90s reference, and then bam, out of nowhere, it's like a family drama. This show really keeps you guessing, and it does feel like they gave the people behind it, whether that be Seth MacFarlane or just his team, it feels like they gave them a lot of control because the episodes can be as long as they want. They can curse and make jokes about whatever they want. There were a few jaw-drop moments from just how shocking some of the humor was in this TV show, and a lot of it was really well thought out and had effort behind the setup and payoff. There's one scene in particular, without spoiling anything, that made me burst out laughing where Ted and John are undercover at a restaurant for various story reasons that I won't spoil, but they're talking to the waitress and Ted comes up with a backstory for his disguise that he's wearing that's all about business and how they're from out of town, yada yada yada. John also wants to have a backstory for his disguise, so he decides to make it incredibly dramatic and depressing and a little bit morbid as well. And that kind of shock humor with a lot of care and effort put into it is super refreshing, and there are multiple moments like that throughout the show. However, there are still moments where it's just plain old shock humor. I don't know, on the whole, I really enjoyed watching this Ted TV show, and I could probably ramble about it for like an hour straight. There is so much weird stuff, there's so many fun moments, creative moments, stupid moments, weird and strange moments. It's just all over the place in a kind of fun, chaotic way. And it's nice to see these characters again in a setting that frankly feels more fitting than how it did in the second Ted movie. The first Ted movie was fine, it's kind of a funny premise, but then after that, it's like, okay, well, we set up this whole world with them. Why not go back to a more interesting time in life, like near the end of high school? That, I think, just works really well. People are into nostalgic 90s things. I'll admit, I kind of dig the show for that aesthetic that they bring sometimes. But it's modern enough for people to just sit down, watch it, and enjoy it. And that's exactly what I did. I really like the Ted TV show, and I think if you like Family Guy or American Dad or that sort of branch of adult comedy, then I think you'd enjoy it too, and I definitely recommend checking it out. If I had to give it a score out of 10, it's like a 7, like a 6.5, 7. It's not like gonna blow you away, but I had a really fun time with it, and I don't regret watching it, and I might show it to some friends so we can watch the few episodes together. We'll see. It gets crazy. I'm not kidding. It gets crazy as the episodes go along. But I'll leave it there. Thank you all very much for watching this video. I could ramble about this show for hours, man. It is so weird, and it's a fun time. It's a really fun time. Definitely check it out. Thanks for all the support. I don't know what video's coming next. There's some stuff I want to talk about in February. Supposedly the new Clone High series comes out then. The new Charlie Kaufman written movie, Orion in the Dark, comes out on Netflix, so I'll probably check that out. Don't know if I'll talk about it, but I might. We'll see. We'll see what the interest is. But I'll leave this there. Like and subscribe, all that fun stuff, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye.